Roundtable Radio is back on the air, but that's not going to last too much longer, and I'll get into detail about that in a little bit. First of all, it's your favorite long-winded, insecure, yet lovable control freak, Eric Santamaria. I've been a fan of pro wrestling for 23 years. I've been working in it for about 7.5. And, of course, we want to hear your voice, too. That's what the Wrestling Roundtable was supposed to be about in the first place, getting everyone's opinion in on it. The number to call is 347-857-4647, and we will be discussing mixed martial arts and professional wrestling. Before I introduce the only other panelist, as seems to be a pattern, I want to remind you about WrestlingRoundtable.com. As we usually do, WrestlingRoundtable.com is your hub for everything Wrestling Roundtable. If you want to look up our archives, I think it's about 108 shows or so that we've done. That's not including all the other things we've uploaded, including matches and blogs and teasers, etc., etc. You can get the links to all of that at WrestlingRoundtable.com. All our social networking sites. We have 2 Facebook pages, a group page where you can join and talk to other fans, and a fan page where you can post and like, please. We are also on Twitter and, of course, YouTube. If you're listening on YouTube, it's way after the fact. And if you want to catch the most up-to-date shows, you want to go to blogtalkradio.com. We're also simulcast on GFL.tv, that's GoFi Live site. And you can also get the archive to all our shows on iTunes. Get it in podcast form there. And if any of you are still left scraggling around MySpace, that ghost site that is MySpace, there's a profile there too, but who uses that shit anymore? Anyway, on WrestlingRoundtable.com, just updated, we have new polls. And those are some interesting ones we'll get to a little later on, but there's new polls for you. I've got some new shows coming your way. We taped about 9 days ago a couple new shows that will be uploaded soon. It's been a very busy week, and I've been trying to get to it, but there's only so many hours in the day. I've had about 8 hours sleep between the past 2 nights, trying to stay up and get some work done for you guys. We have a very good show coming up this week. It'll be up, I guess, in a couple days, but definitely later this week. Show number 61. Those topics that are covered are The Undertaker's career, and first up, independent wrestling with a very special all-wrestler panel featuring Grizzly Redwood, Alex Payne, and Shane Hagedorn, all appearing for the first time this season, but in the case of Hagedorn, the first time since 2009, since our Puroresu and Hardcore show. Alex Payne had a little cameo last year on show number 50, which was the invasion topic that everyone came out of the woodwork for and then disappeared right back. But he's come back, thankfully, and that's a very interesting talk, so look for that later on. But new shows that will not be happening are more radio shows, because in about 3 weeks, it's the last Tuesday in May, show number 50, our 50th radio show. That is going to be our last Wrestling Roundtable radio show. And reason being is really a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money for little payback. And don't get me wrong. I mean, if it wasn't so fucking expensive to do this show, it's $40 a month on this account for Blog Talk Radio. We've been doing this about 2 years. That's about, I don't even know how many hundreds of dollars off the top of my head out of my pocket. And the pay for ads suck. Google AdSense fucked us over last year. All the fans turned out about August, sometime in the summer, to try and support the show, and ended up backfiring, and now I'm not even making any sort of money on all the YouTube videos that we have. And in addition to that, Google, because it's easy to blame them, right? Google/YouTube or whatever has been just decimating our subscriber numbers. We're certainly not the only ones. When they reformatted YouTube and changed it over to this shitty new look, it's actually kind of reminiscent of Facebook's timeline, which also sucks. But the numbers just keep dropping, and it's very disheartening, because when I see other shows, and frankly, none of them are any good. I've watched them. They're shit. And when we decided to start doing this a few years ago, the idea was, like I said, for everyone to call in roundtable, is everyone get together and contribute. Now, I understand that I took on the lion's share of the work, but it's becoming way too much. It's taken up way too much time and money and effort with very little payback. And I feel like I'm spending a lot of time and energy into it, and I'm not seeing a lot back from that. So we're going to keep going with the video shows for the foreseeable future. This will probably be our last year doing that, our last season, but no timetable just yet on when that'll be. But the radio show is definitely coming to an end because this is just ridiculous already. Will Brooks, you are the other panelist tonight, as you are all the time. Every show you come out for it because you're dedicated, you're a team player, and how many others are there? You know what I mean? Like, I could talk myself for 2 fucking hours, but I don't want to do that. I want to hear what other people have to say. So it's just getting to be kind of shitty because if it wasn't so much out of my pocket and time, because I have to squeeze all this in between a 9 to 5 in the next state over and everything else I need to do in life, I'm losing sleep over that. I do like the fans who are in the chat room right now. I see you talking, Royce, and everyone else in there who come out every time on the Facebook page and the message board. And I appreciate people appreciating the show. But I just really wish we would do a little better because I truly believed in this concept, and I want it to do better than it has. So any thoughts, Will Brooks, on a very not too great beginning here? Because, like I said, the next show is going to be the last one. But I do truly appreciate you and everyone else who used to call in, but especially you because you're still here. And it's been a fun ride. I wish it wouldn't come to an end. I wish I could take on more work because I, like I said, believed in this concept. I just figured when we started it, make it good, people will come, but I just feel like we should have more success than we've had so far. It's kind of a downtime, I guess. So how are you feeling tonight? A little tired, huh?
Yeah. I'm actually kind of curious why you're still plugging MySpace. The 5 people left on MySpace don't care about the Wrestling Roundtable, man.
Sometimes you'd be surprised. I don't know.
I've only missed one radio show since we started doing it, and that was even when I was just a fan at that point. The only other one you could maybe count was my birthday one a year or 2 ago, but I wasn't there for the intro and the outro. So,
yeah, you did call in regardless, even though you were out for your birthday, and that was much appreciated. All right, then. I guess let's get down to business because as far as mixed martial arts goes, it's an interesting story this past Saturday, which was UFC's 3rd broadcast on Fox, Big Fox, as Dana White likes to say. And it was from East Rutherford, New Jersey's Izod Center. And I got a very WrestleMania New York/New Jersey feel from it because we're in the shadow of New York, and here's the Statue of Liberty. We want New York, New York, New York, but we have to be over here. We're in Jersey, whatever. Jersey's never good enough, but about a little over 10,000 people came out for Izod Center's UFC broadcast, and the big story about it now isn't even so much the fighters who won, as it was that night. Now it's talk about the rating, how it wasn't good, it bombed, and this and that. Well, it did a 1.6 rating on Fox's broadcast channel, which translates out to 2.4 million viewers, and this is very much down from not only the previous show, but especially the first one in November. And seeing the crowd that did come out, which there were a lot of scattered seats, the Fuel TV rating was even shit for the prelims. What I get out of that is it's all a real big shame because this was the best one yet. I think third time the charm has been said a lot about this show, and I believe it's totally true because that's exactly the feeling I had after it. 4 fights and 3 finishes, and they were all good fights. The worst one, if you want to say, or maybe the least, was the welterweight fight between Johnny Hendricks and Josh Koscheck, which went to split decision. There was not too much going on here. They didn't go to the ground too much. It was primarily a boxing fight, essentially, and Johnny Hendricks just outstruck Josh Koscheck a little bit more, One judge disagreed with that, but two others gave it to Johnny Hendricks, and now, much like every other fight except the heavyweight fight, everyone's talking about the winner getting a title shot or getting in title contention. So Johnny Hendricks has a good story in MMA there. They're kind of pushing for him to get the welterweight shot against the winner of GSP and Carlos Condit's unification fight for the welterweight and interim welterweight title later this year. So we'll see about that, because Dana White has been hinting that there's a super fight coming up in January, and just based on the venues he mentioned when he was giving his vague answer at the pre-fight press conference about when they were coming back to Texas, he did mention Cowboys Stadium, which holds 80,000 people. He also mentioned Vegas, because that's always the backup as their home base, as it has been in the case of Silva Sonnen 2 not happening in Brazil as originally planned. But he also mentioned Toronto, going back to Rogers Center. Even though GSP is supposed to fight in November and they're already pushing for Johnny Hendricks to get the winner of that, I can't think it would be anything but Anderson Silva GSP finally. Anderson Silva doesn't have a lot of fights left, it seems, and I think regardless of whether he gets past Charles Sonnen or not, and our poll recently indicates that most of you think he will, that is one of those fights that they have been hyping for years, trying to arrange for years, and being that Anderson Silva's run is almost over, you'd think they'd finally want to do it. And if they were going to fill 80,000 people in Cowboys Stadium or Toronto, 55,000 plus again, you'd think GSP would have to be on the card for Toronto, if nothing else. But we'll see about that. That kind of relates to our poll later on. But the opener in Izod Center was the heavyweight fight between LeVar The Rock Johnson, all right, not The Rock, could be Dwayne The Rock Johnson. He is very reminiscent looking of The Rock with the goatee and the head-shaved, tattooed look and blah, 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 but he is primarily known for his Strikeforce fights, but his second fight here in UFC was a first-round TKO over Pat Barry, and I was real disappointed for Pat Barry. He's such a likable guy. He's very cordial, very funny, self-deprecating too, but his background's primarily kickboxing, so he always makes light of his groundwork not being very good. In this case, much like his last fight with Christian Morecraft, I think we could see visible improvement. Now, I did think it was kind of weird when he got the mount and practically hopped right out of it to go for a crucifix, but he was attempting an Americana, so that was cool to see him attempt that, because we saw improved groundwork in that last fight, like I said, against Christian Morecraft, escaping arm lock attempt. But here, we see the pattern again with Pat Barry. He wins one, loses one, wins one, loses one. He seems like he's constantly yo-yoing in the same place. And the finish was just driving me nuts, because LeVar catches him and starts unloading with these uppercuts and punches, and Pat Barry was just standing there taking. I was like, move, move. He didn't even seem to try and get out of that. And eventually, the referee stepped in, and LeVar Johnson wins. We move on to the middleweight fight between Alan Belcher and Husamar Palhares, which, when I said third time's the charm for the Fox pay-per-view, already we've had a good heavyweight fight with a finish in the first round. Well, there was also a first-round TKO in the middleweight fight, which was really stylistically the opposite of the heavyweight fight we just saw, because Belcher dived right in against this jiu-jitsu black belt and went after the man known for his heel hooks and his knee bars and leg work right on the ground. And it was such a great display, this chess match of counter move, counter move for their leg locks. We even, as Joe Rogan called it, almost saw a banana split as he was attempting, looking for that twister. And then Husamar Palhares trying to turn that around into a heel hook on a knee bar, etc. And Alan Belcher eventually just caught him, started unloading, and got the first round TKO. And people were talking about him getting a middleweight title shot, or at least getting in contention for Anderson Silva or whoever's belt it's going to be after Silva Sonnen 2. Of course, they were also mentioning Bellator middleweight champion, former now, Hector Lombard, who just signed with UFC. Dana White said, if Lombard wins his first fight, I could see him getting into the title picture. And I was like, really? Hector Lombard has the distinction of being the only Bellator champion in any division to defend his title, which sounds absurd, but then again, they do have that tournament format where only the tournament winners get title shots, so there really aren't as many title defenses as elsewhere. But, okay, so he's the Bellator middleweight champion. Who's he beat? I mean, everyone knows the best competition, for the most part, is in UFC, and he gets one win in his division, and he's already getting a title picture scenario. I just don't see that there. But I already talked about the welterweight fight. Let's move on to the main event, because it really just shows this rating that star power is almost everything. Because, like I said, including even the prelims, Fight of the Night went to a prelim, and I think if that didn't win, there was another bantamweight fight that could have been Fight of the Night. All of them aired either on Facebook or Fuel TV. And even though it was an overall good night of fights, this Fox broadcast so far showing 3 fights, and it was the best one, I thought, as far as entertainment, balance, pacing, amount of fights shown. It drew the lowest rating. Very interesting, because it really just shows star power. And even though Jim Miller is the hometown or the home state guy fighting in Jersey, Jersey strong and all that stuff, so he did have the crowd behind him, not a lot of people tuned in, and it's a shame because it was so good. Nate Diaz is a guy that I feel you put him in there with the champion and he's got a good shot of winning. This kid is really good. And between the 2 Diaz brothers, I think he's a lot more tolerable as far as his attitude and public presentation. A little more, maybe not calm is the right word, as we saw his taunting in the middle of this fight. But Nick Diaz just rubs me the wrong way. But Nate Diaz, I look forward to seeing him every time they fight, whether it's Nick or Nate. They're great fighters. And in this case, Nate Diaz, once again, just shows whether it's standing, on his feet, they love to box, they love jiu-jitsu, they can do it all. And even though he's this lanky-looking guy, don't underestimate the Diaz brothers. Jim Miller, he's been finished now for the first time in his career, submitted with a guillotine, one-arm guillotine, no less. And in the second round, a lot of those home state dreams were dashed, as Nate Diaz now looks really good, and people were saying, oh, he should not get a title shot ahead of Anthony Pettis, and I was like, you know what? So what? Anthony Pettis beat Ben Henderson last time. Their careers have gone differently since then, and I think in this very stacked division, Nate Diaz should be right at the top there and probably get the winner of Edgar Henderson 2 later on in the year. But what do you think about the main event here on Fox, Will Brooks? Nate Diaz with the victory.
Before I say anything about that fight, I want to mention the Hendricks fight against Kosek. Maybe I'm biased, but you can never win against a guy with a great beard. I think beards will always win out, and Hendricks' beard is pretty damn epic. That being said, Nate Diaz, I think, actually should get the next title shot. I mean, his last fight against Cerrone was absolutely incredible. I mean, he really, systematically kicked his ass. Made a guy who I thought Derek Sonnen's going to wipe the floor with him, really kicked his ass. And he really showed that Jim Miller that, hey, man, I can box, but I choke at the same time. And he did that exactly. So I got to give Diaz, I think he's the number one contender right now. I don't see anyone who's really done a better job so far.
It's interesting, speaking of the contendership for this belt, like I said, a very stacked division. BJ Penn apparently was recently offered a title shot against Strikeforce lightweight champion Gilbert Melendez, turned it down. Apparently he's only interested in fighting in UFC. So I thought that was rather interesting how even if it's a low level or whatever sort of fight that BJ Penn might take if he comes out of retirement, as Dana White seems to think he will, that he'd rather fight in UFC than get a title shot against Strikeforce. Pretty telling about the state of affairs in Strikeforce right now. But that's a whole other issue. I'm just trying to make the point that, okay, they could bring over the lightweight champion Gilbert Melendez and make it even more stacked. Even though that's a very stacked division, like I said, Nate Diaz, I think, should be at the top of the heap. But I brought up the rating before, and it seems like a lot of people have this impression now that this is the third one in. UFC is on a downward spiral. They think the hot time has passed. Brock Lesnar is retired, and he was a big part of that in bringing UFC to prominence. The Ultimate Fighter live on Friday nights, ratings are hitting a all-time low for the series. It's also on Friday night. I think that's a big factor. But like I said, Fox, this rating has gone down. Fuel TV's rating for this one wasn't very good on the prelims, although they still insist that, and it's true, just look at the numbers, but they have had huge growth as far as their network goes because of UFC. They're practically the UFC channel as it is, but buy rates have gone down in large part. Last year they took a big dip. It seems like there's a lot of cynics out there who were only a few months into this 7-year deal on Fox think that it's all over for UFC. It's downhill from here, even though they just got, I believe, sanctioned in Vermont. There's only like 4 states left that don't sanction mixed martial arts, and New York this week, as we found out, is still one of them for another year or so. That MSG dream is still out of reach for the time being. But I'm looking at it like, you know what? Even if, let's say, out of nowhere, which I don't think this would happen at all, but let's just say, for the sake of example, tomorrow Fox goes, deal is canceled, null and void, no more UFC on Fox. I think they'd be perfectly fine. Hell, they could have, if the UN meeting or whatever was going on with the United Nations in Brazil coming up that pretty much prevented Silversun 2 from happening, they could fill a soccer stadium in Brazil. Hell, they could practically run out of Brazil for the rest of their lives if they wanted and probably stay profitable. But what's your impression, Will? I mean, I know just from our circle of fans, like the Roundtable, we used to get together all the time to watch UFC, and it's not so much anymore. My usual viewing partners are nowhere to be found. I've stuck with it, and I'm glad you've stuck with it, but do you think that we're in the minority? Have people gotten over this fad, if it is indeed a fad, or do you think that the best days are still yet ahead?
I don't see anything to really make me think, oh shit, the UFC's in trouble. UFC's not in trouble. The pay-per-views are still making them money. They're growing internationally. It's really all contingent on New York. If they can get New York within the next 2 or 3 years, then they got no problems. People will always want to see other guys get their ass kicked. It's just a way of life. If the UFC does go down, guarantee fights in hockey will go up. I mean, people want to see fighting. Maybe they might say UFC is a little too brutal, maybe, but there's always been people who want to see it. There's always going to be people who want to pay to see it, and there always will be. So I'm not worried about UFC 1 iota. And even if they do, Dana White's still almost a half a billionaire, so I don't think he's going to mind that much either.
And speaking of Dana White, he did an interview with the Wall Street Journal recently. The interviewer sounded like someone who just made their own video on YouTube and narrated it. It was pretty lame, but it was an interesting point that people usually lose sight of. They have a global view on this sport. They are representing, it's kind of like how the NFL is football, essentially. I know there's a Canadian Football League and whatever else out there. Just like in MMA, there's Bellator and whatever else. There might be tons of indie MMA groups and whatever. But UFC essentially is the sport, like WWE is wrestling for the most part. And they want to take this worldwide. And that's a key part to their expansion. NFL is huge in America, but not elsewhere in the world. Kind of like the opposite, where football or soccer, as we call it, is huge everywhere else in the world but here. And in a lot of places, they're only behind soccer. Fighting is universal. It's pretty easy to understand. There's been fighting culture in pretty much any culture that you can look back on. They haven't even gone to China yet, and they have a lot of countries that they haven't gotten to yet, just like that they're planning on. So even, like I said, if the Fox deal went away, I still think they'd be fine. Hell, they were making tons of money before that. And we don't know exactly the numbers, per se, because they're not a publicly traded company, but if they were doing well before Fox, I think they'll do just fine after Fox. The sport is here to stay. It's growing, and I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. So if you're worried that UFC, or if you think that UFC is a fad and the best days have passed it by, don't think that's so quick. let's give it a little more time. We got some big fights coming up. We're going to move on to WWE Extreme Rules, which took place in Chicago a few weeks ago, the other weekend. And before I do that, got some poll results to read. Now, I talked bleakly about the future of the show before, but like I said, I always believed in it, and I thought it was a great format, and I hope most of you have enjoyed it, I believe, in the past few years. But if the Wrestling Roundtable was to ever get on television, what channel do you think that we should be on? Now, I hate to phrase it like that because you hear shit like that all the time. People go, just as a for instance, why doesn't TNA just get on whatever? Or why doesn't ROH just go on this? Or blah, blah, blah. Like it's that fucking easy. If it was that easy, everybody would do it. They really have no clue how deals are made like that. I'm not going to go into detail about it per se right now, but I'm just saying that getting a gig like that ain't that easy. Just as a for instance, Fuel TV just turned down TNA's, what was the sister promotion called, like All Wheels Wrestling, whatever that thing was that they were developing. And hell, I mean, Fuel TV before the UFC deal was probably desperate for content. I looked at their listing one day and it was like one show repeated all day. They're pretty recent startups, so I'm sure they're looking for content back then. So as it is right now, they're like, well, we're UFC. We don't want any pro wrestling on our channel. So if TNA can't get a fucking gig on Fuel TV, I doubt we could. But one of the polls recently, like I said, if Roundtable was on TV, what would you like to see us on? Fight Now TV got 2% of the vote. Fight Now is a lot more recent startup than even Fuel TV. I believe they've got offices in New Jersey, Toronto, and Vegas. I'd love to work any of those places. I love all those places. But not a lot of reach. I think it might be maybe relegated to Cablevision. I'm not sure. It's newer. There's no pro wrestling on it yet, but it's got all other combat sports, so maybe at least we are in there. We could certainly be the first. We were the first one on Go Fight Live. We were the first pro wrestling talk show on Go Fight Live, and now there's lots of others. But like I had said before in the show, I think they got it right the first time. Fuel TV, moving on up the list, is 3%. I think that's a no-go now. MTV2, 5%. And what's really weird is MTV2, every time I DVR, like if I'm trying to watch Bellator or whatever, it comes across in 4:3 on my TV. It's not in HD. I wonder why that is. I don't know what's going on there. But MTV2, at least, has shown Lucha Libre USA in the past, Bellator for the time being before it goes to Spike next year. So we do know in this company, the Viacom company, that they do show pro wrestling and MMA on the same channels as evidenced here and Spike TV later on. So that's a good one. The Fight Network in Canada, 15%. Then we move on up to the last two. G4, 28% of the vote. That comes in second place, and I would love to do that one. As people who know me know, I'm a big video game fan, and if you think I can talk for hours about pro wrestling or mixed martial arts, add video games to the list too. Number one, though, with 47% of the vote, was Spike TV. And I have to agree, I just checked out the MMA Uncensored live show recently from Times Square, and I think we could pull it off. So, being that Spike is the future home of Bellator, the former home of UFC, and the current and future home of TNA, and of course ECW and WWE in the past, I think we'd be a great fit for Spike TV. So I'm glad you agree with that. But the other poll we had recently was who will win the next heavyweight title fight? Only 22% of you thought Frank Mir wins. Now, I'm not saying I disagree with you, because I'm picking Junior Dos Santos myself, but I wouldn't count Frank Mir out either. The guy is great on the ground. He has a good chin, except against Brock Lesnar, apparently, and he's been on a real good streak lately. In fact, he was just on WWE.com briefly when they had that whole article and video from the Gracies on the Kimura, which was fucking mind-boggling to see on WWE.com. I approve. That's awesome. But Frank Mir, last known for breaking Minotauro Nogueira's arm in half when he locked on the Kimura. 78% of you thought Junior Dos Santos will retain his heavyweight title at the next UFC 146 against Frank Mir, and I agree with you there. And I hope to see that because Junior Dos Santos, very likable guy and great fighter too. Some would say best boxing in the heavyweight division too. But the other poll, this is pretty interesting. What match would you want to see the most at WrestleMania 29 next year? There is one match that I didn't include that I guess I should have because it's one of the ones that have been rumored to be talked about. They haven't made up their mind yet who Brock Lesnar will be wrestling, but the rumor is, well, I'll tell you after the poll. So let's start at the bottom. This was very, very funny to me. Triple H and Shawn Michaels. Now, as you could see by them involving Shawn Michaels in the Triple H storyline with The Undertaker this past year, a lot of people seem to believe that they were building towards the comeback match that it would be Triple H and Michaels. I don't know if that's on the back burner a little bit, but I believe it was talked about, but not in our poll because it did 0.0. 0% of the votes went to Triple H and Shawn Michaels. Pretty fucking telling. 1% went to Rock and Undertaker. 2% went to Austin Hogan. Only 2. Wow. Hogan coming back to WWE would be a big deal, and so would Austin. And if they set that up, only 2%, really? What, do you want to see it at WrestleMania 30 instead because it's a round number? 3% went to Santino and the Hunky Tonk Man. See, I got to throw in a goofy one in every poll, but a lot of people were like, that would have been better if they had done the hunkometer thing a lot longer years ago, and I agree, but whatever. The next one were 2 Cena matches tied together. 6% went to Cena and Rock, the rematch, and Cena-Hogan, which would be fun. And then the next 3 were all tied. 2 Brock matches were tied together. Rock and Brock 2, which would be pretty pointless. I mean, come on. All these matches that they're talking about with Brock potentially, sure, they'd be great, but what's the bigger picture here? A part-timer against a part-timer, who's that help? Brock and Punk, now if it's anything like the Extreme Rules match we'll be talking about with John Cena, I'd love to see that. And Cena-Austin, which would be a lot better than I think people think. At least the way I fantasy booked it in my head, it was pretty good. 11% went to Rock and Shawn Michaels. Pretty interesting. Never happened. I'm sure that's why. But going into second place, 15% went to Cena Undertaker, which I've been a heavy advocate of. I still say Cena's the only guy that I think people would believe had a chance of actually beating Undertaker in, I guess, a more legit way. But either way, it pales in comparison to number 1, which did over twice that number, because the match that you want to see the most, according to this poll of the choices, is Stone Cold Steve Austin and CM Punk at WrestleMania 29. Now, the one that I didn't include, which I guess I should have, is, like I alluded to, the rumor was they were trying to figure out which one of these 3 were going to wrestle Brock next year, Undertaker, Rock, and Austin. Now, Austin Brock, of those 3, would be the one I'd want to see because, look, it's just a symptom of the problem we've been talking about for years. Look at that list. None of them are fresh names. None of them are new names. I know Cena's been around for 8 years on top, but at least of the poster this year, which was like, I don't know, Triple H, Undertaker, Rock, and Cena, he's the only one that hasn't been from the Attitude Era. And just the fact that they haven't put over these new people to be stars, that when a Brock Lesnar comes back, we go, oh, wow, there's all these matches we want to see with these guys that are around now, not from 8 years ago when he was already there and he's already wrestled them. It just shows the problem there with not putting people over. But if that's their choices, of those 3, I'd rather see Austin and Brock because at least that has never happened. So that's the poll results that we recently had. We've got 2 new ones right now on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Which MMA super fight would you want to see the most? And who would you want to see in TNA's Gut Check Challenge? So those are on Wrestling Roundtable right now. But speaking of Brock, I've alluded to the Extreme Rules pay-per-view that he just recently had, and that happened on April 29th. We taped that day our new shows, went back to my place, watched the pay-per-view from Chicago, and if WrestleMania was good, and it was, well, they did 2 in a row, because Extreme Rules was a good show, and it was the first non-Rumble or WrestleMania pay-per-view that I've ordered from them since SummerSlam 2001. And if you wonder if Brock Lesnar is a draw, hey, everyone came out for this one. So I don't know what the buy rate is just yet. That hasn't come out yet. Even if it does, I don't know if it's going to be a huge spike from last year. Probably not, but that's not the point. No one's really a draw right now outside of 1 or 2 appearances, but that's a whole other topic, and I want to stay on Extreme Rules because it opened with Randy Orton and Kane in a Falls Count Anywhere match. I thought the brawling and the crowd into the back went on a little too long. It sucks that Zack Ryder is relegated to jumping on Kane. Even if it is continuity, that's the most he's going to get. But Orton gets his win over Kane with the RKO on the chair. And what do you think about the opener, Will Brooks?
It wasn't a bad match. I agree with you that it sucks that Zack Ryder is always on the bench just jumping Kane with a couple punches and then getting pushed, and literally just getting pushed. And then that's it for him. Kind of sucks for him right now.
Well, hopefully that is a dead issue. It seems like they've moved on, and Orton's going to be in a 4-way at Over the Limit, so luckily that heatless feud has gone away. But moving on, speaking of heat, which means hot, and that makes me think of Brodus Clay's dancers. Holy shit. Now, I don't know what developmental diva it is. I know the dumb one from Tough Enough who liked Alicia Fox's match the best or whatever. She's one of them. But the other one, what a fucking dumper on this broad. Holy shit. I was just like hypnotized by her ass. Just incredible. So he's dancing with Hornswoggle now. Ha ha. And Dolph Ziggler comes out with Vicky Guerrero. Excuse me. And Dolph Ziggler, I guess the word would be, is relegated to this match, and it only went a few minutes. Brodus Clay wins. Big splash. People are still digging this gimmick, I guess. Anything on Brodus Clay's victory over Dolph Ziggler, who should be a fucking headliner right now, Will?
I do agree that he should be a headliner right now, but I'm loving the Funkasaurus. It's a funny character. I think Brodus Clay's doing a funny job with it. Yes, the dancers are sexy asses. I remember being like so extremely happy when he came to the rescue of Santino, thinking, yes, they're actually giving him an angle. They're not just having him do squash matches because they had nothing to do with them. They actually gave him something to do, and I'm glad he had a match on pay-per-view. It wasn't like, I'm not saying it was a phenomenal match, 5-star classic or anything, but it was a decent match, and Dolph Ziggler did the right thing. He bumped all over the place for him because he's a bigger guy, so I thought it was okay.
Yeah, it served its purpose, and that's perfectly fine. Especially for this pay-per-view, which I thought was paced pretty well, booked pretty well. And speaking of booked, that's going to be what I talk about with Cody Rhodes regaining the Intercontinental from the Big Show in their tables match, because people were like, oh, the finish sucked, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what the fuck? This was the most creative finish I'd seen in a while. I thought it was brilliant. Cody drop kicks Big Show's. He's trying to get back into the ring from the apron, and his foot goes through the table, so Big Show sold it great with that, oh my God, are you kidding, look, because he technically went through the table. I mean, he wasn't damaged, but he still lost by the rules of the match, so the heel gets the championship back by little scheming measures, and then he gets the shit beat out of him as payback. I loved it. I thought it was great. You're going to see me bitch about the fucking people complaining online about this later on in the main event, but that's just a hint of some of the cynicism I read, and I was like, are you kidding? The group we were watching it with, the Roundtable, we fucking loved it. So do you echo that sentiment, Will?
I agree. I like the ending. I love the Big Show's look. It's just classic. It's like, oops, oh no, did I just do that? Kind of, you know what I mean? Just great, just great visual on his face. Sold the entire moment to me. It was a great ending.
Speaking of that look and the voice you made with it, people were like, see, they're just making him look out to be like an idiot. And I was like, it wasn't his mistake. He got drop kicked. It's not like he did it on his own by accident. I don't know. People are just way too fucking much sometimes. We move on to the first title match as far as the world titles go, because there's multiple. WCW belt, the big gold belt, as World Heavyweight Champion Sheamus gets the rematch against the former champion, Daniel Bryan. And I love the shirts, yes, 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 in 18 seconds. Pretty Freudian there. But I love the play on their WrestleMania match. Now, granted, 18 seconds is not what I wanted or what anybody else wanted for the WrestleMania match, and that's why Daniel Bryan got so fucking over. I mean, he was already over anyway, but this just took it to another level because people were reacting to the booking of the wrestling match at WrestleMania. It's pretty interesting in that sense. That turned him into a bigger star than what he was before, and I think it was totally unintentional. This 2 out of 3 falls match, though, great psychology, where we see Daniel Bryan kicking Sheamus as he's tied up in the ropes, trying to do some damage, so even though he gets disqualified, he leaves him so hurt and vulnerable that he's easy pickings. And it worked at first anyway, and then after he got the first fall, he's going for the second one, and they recreate WrestleMania where he runs in and gets Brogue kicked, but this time he kicks out, thankfully. And that led to some more good sequences where he did hit the second one, Bryan sold it with a good spin, and Sheamus gets the good 2 out of 3 fall victory in a match that was given plenty of time, had great heat, and was just done very well. And I think everybody enjoyed it. Did you?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. The only thing I thought was weird is when Bryan was kicking him incessantly and really injuring him, like, they took forever to get the next fall going. It's like, dude, come on, let's get this fucking thing going. And then that defeats the whole purpose of getting disqualified if you can't take advantage of it right after the fact. So that's the only problem I have with the match. Other than that, great match. I'm glad now Bryan's going into a much better angle that I can't wait to watch.
I think the delay there was just to set up waiting for Sheamus to get up so he can get Brogue kick spots. So I think the build there was pretty good. As far as time wasted, I don't think it was the worst of the night. That would be in the main event, but I'll get to that later on. So the WCW Starrcade-esque style squash match ensued now with 2 jobbers, Aaron Relic and Jay Hatton, doing this jobbers laughing at each other, getting squashed by Ryback angle on pay-per-view this time, and the Chicago crowd chanting Goldberg throughout it was pretty funny and enjoyable. I mean, I guess it was fine for a couple-minute-long segment. What'd you think of Ryback?
I think Lawrence made a great joke when he said that it was the first time Goldberg's got legitimate chance in WWE history. The only problem I have with Ryback is I think his finish is kind of weak. Other than that, I like it.
All right. Well, the next title match, WWE Champion CM Punk in another WrestleMania rematch with Chris Jericho, this time in jeans, as they had a Chicago street fight, kind of like WrestleMania 13 Chicago street fight. Well, not quite, but in this one, they put Punk over again, so at least they did the right thing. I'm glad in this whole feud that they had, because Punk's been champion since November. They have not switched it off. I like long title reigns. I like guys being built to hold it, and kind of like how WrestleMania ended with a tap out, this one ended with the go to sleep. I like the codebreaker spot with the chair. The rest of it was kind of sloppy and whatever, but it accomplished what it needed to. So how do you feel about the Chicago street fight?
Might have been the match of the night. It was really great. A lot of good spots. Even though we all agree that Punk has probably the worst elbow drop in history, his elbow drop onto the table was pretty damn cool. But it's kind of sad to see when your elbow drop still pales in comparison to Test and Shane McMahon.
Well, I definitely disagree with you as far as match of the night, although people seem to enjoy it, but we'll get to what I thought was match of the night. It certainly wasn't the next match, but the next match was what everyone was hoping and / expecting to be the match with Karma coming back, but it was not. They even said so before it started, and instead we get Layla. Now look, I love Layla. I've always loved Layla. In fact, I remember when she won this is how into WWF I was at the time compared to now, where when she won the Divas contest, I actually called Rod about it. Like, yes, our girl won. Sweet fucking ass, great hair, great face, love the accent, and everyone's like, oh, she could do lucha stuff now. Whatever, I don't really care. Now she comes back to crickets, and No one seemed to really care as the Bellas dropped the title, well, Nikki Bella in this case, dropped the title before their contract expired. So Layla wins, and the crowd goes mild. How'd you feel?
A little disappointed, man. I like Layla a lot, too, but we all wanted Connor, and we didn't get it.
Let's get to the main event, because this was definitely match of the night to me. Hell, this has been the best match, in my opinion, that WWE's had all year, if not in a long time. I cannot emphasize how much I love this match. Where to begin? Firstly, the moment it was over, I felt we had just seen an instant classic. Hell, from the first spot on, you could tell this was something different. And actually, I'm going to bring on Royce for this one because I owe you an apology. Royce, you there?
Yes. Hello?
Royce in Pomona, California. I don't know why anybody would listen to me ever again because the last radio show before this pay-per-view, you called in and asked, do you think there's going to be any work-shoot elements in this? And I said, oh, no, why would they do that? WWE had Brock before he was ever in UFC and blah, blah, blah. And, of course, Brock's winning. If nothing else, there's a no finish. Cena's certainly not winning. I was wrong on all accounts, and, frankly, seeing as it played out, I was very happy that it did play out that way, and I was wrong. Are you happy that you were right?
Yeah, I am a fan of Cena, and I didn't mind that he won. You know how Smarks are. They're mad that Cena won. But I think he kind of had to win because, you know, how they booked WrestleMania.
Right.
And because, like, if Cena won that one, that would have easily, you could have easily gave Brock the match, but you couldn't possibly have Cena lose two huge marquee matches in a row. That right there would have totally showed you that wins and losses matter because he would have been, I would say a joke, but it was like, it would have been like 08 all over again where he chokes in a big match situation. So he kind of had to go over that.
I totally agree with that, and for a slightly different reason, and I agree with what you're saying, but I think that what we said about WrestleMania on this show, that after WrestleMania, the message was plainly clear that the guys from 13 years ago were much better than anybody around now because we can show up once a year and draw more money and have better matches and be more over than anybody who's around now, you losers. That would have been much more cemented than it even already was had Brock won. I, like everybody else, was expecting Brock to win his first fight back. But even though I still feel that Cena should have won at WrestleMania, the fact that he didn't made this a lot easier to take. Now, granted, when the finish happened, I was rather surprised because I did not expect it to go that way. But after seeing the match, I was glad it did. And what you're saying about smart marks, now, firstly, this term smart, I don't like people using it because they really mean smart mark. There was always that divide where either you're a mark or you're a smart mark. Smart mark, of course, is a contradiction in terms, but let's just stick with that for the sake of example. And now everyone uses smart to mean internet fans, when I've always was under the impression it should mean someone who really isn't dedicated to either side. There's obvious stereotypes that go along with either description, whether you consider yourself one or not, or whatever, but everyone always likes to say smart. I don't particularly like it. That's aside the point, though. Let's get back to the fucking internet fans, because I never want to fucking hear again that I or anyone else on the show is cynical, because the shit that I read on the internet after this fucking match was fucking sickening. After this match, now granted, we were in a room full of wrestling fans. This is the roundtable here. Wrestling fans and wrestlers. All of us enjoyed this show, enjoyed this match in particular. We loved it. We were into it the whole time. It told a great story from Brock is a fucking beast. He destroyed John Cena for 99% of that match. He's a monster. How did Cena win? By taking the chain that Brock was going to use because he's vicious and then was getting arrogant like, I don't need this. It was his own carelessness. Cena picked up on that and used it later on when Brock got even more careless yet again. And he beat him after that with an FU, or attitude adjustment, excuse me, PG. And that was like the only other move he had in the whole match. Afterwards, his arm is dangling, he's bloody, he's beaten. So what do we accomplish? John Cena wins, because frankly he needed it. And even if he didn't, he's the fucking man. Hulk Hogan always won. Cena is the new Hogan for WWE right now, so he should win. Maybe not all the time, but in this case, the way they did it, I think it accomplished a lot. Brock still looks like a beast, looks like a monster, and now people are like, this is the worst booking decision ever. They killed Brock. It's all over, blah, blah, blah. I was like, motherfucker, Brock lost his first UFC fight in like under 2 minutes or whatever and tapped out no less, and that was real. And somehow he's dead now. I don't understand that at all. And what was the most annoying was I saw this one where someone was like, I'm sick of this PG shit, Superman comeback, blah, 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 fuck this stuff. I was like, no, fuck you. When Cena came out, there were those two little kids in the front row who were looked like, 6, 7 years old, and their parents had them dressed up in their Cena gear and whatever. It's for them, okay? It's not for fucking you. Like, when we were kids watching for Hulk Hogan and whatever, were the adults going, fuck all this? Well, maybe, yeah, they were watching NWA instead. But point being, both adults and children enjoyed it back then. It's their childhood now, not yours. And granted, I don't like being part of the forgotten generation, as we like to say. They go through this cycle where they forget about us. It's not that they need to cater to us, but it's for the kids now. They're having fun. They want to see Mysterio and Cena and all that sort of shit. What is wrong with that? When Cena came out and he posed and looked down and saw the kids and he had that look on his face like, I don't want to let them down, but how can I beat this guy? I don't know if I can, but I'm going to try, blah, blah, blah. Like, all that was conveyed in his face. Through this whole vicious, monstrous beating that Lesnar's giving Cena through this match, the kids were not crying, but they were pretty stone-faced, like, oh no, I don't know about this. And then Cena won, and at this point, he had won over Chicago, okay? The crowd that was booing the shit out of him last year at Money in the Bank against Punk, people cheered Cena winning because he fucking overcame the monster. Brock sold the attitude adjustment great on the steps, look of pain as he's dangling over the steps that he was just dancing on earlier in the match, looking like King Kong on the stage, like the monster he was supposed to be. Just reading how people were so pissed off about this finish and hated it so much, most of which I think don't even saw it. And they, oh, fuck the kids. No, fuck you. You're the one torrenting and streaming this shit. Those kids are spending the money, so why should they cater to you? Your fucking bring back the attitude era bullshit. So I thought it was great. I loved it. Well worth the money. One of my favorite WWE matches in a long, long time. What did you think, Will?
Anybody who hates Cena obviously didn't watch this match, because after watching this match, I had nothing but the utmost respect for this man. He took a shit kicking in the middle of that ring. I mean, there's no other way of saying it. The only thing that kind of pissed me off was how they stopped it really early on for blood. It's like, come on, let these guys wrestle, damn it. I mean, and we all knew blood was going to happen, especially after he got busted open when the first time they got into a scuffle with each other.
Yeah, they had to know that was going to happen if they were going to stiff each other hard way like they did with the chain and the elbows at the beginning. So, yeah, that was a little, but it didn't kill the match for me in any way.
No, but it just was annoying.
It was pretty pussy of them. Hulk Hogan used to bleed all the time.
Yeah. The other part I thought was like, holy shit, kind of noise. When Brock jumped on Cena on the rope and then he fell over, you're like, and after he gets up limping, you're like, oh shit, no. Do not tell me he just got injured already. Tonight, when we watch the replay, he didn't really so much get injured. He just kind of fell a little awkward. It wasn't that big a deal. But at first glance, you were thinking the same thing I was. You were like, oh shit. Hopefully, he did not blow on his knee in that one botch. That would be horrible. I never in my life have ever rooted for Super Cena, but I was so, when he was hulking up, I was behind him. I was like, yes, go Cena. Because he just got his ass kicked for 20 minutes? You're like, please, Cena, do something, man. I mean, come on. And then he finally did, and he won the match. I was right behind him the whole time. I was like, go Cena.
Yeah, you really have to give both guys so much credit. Brock is just out of his fucking mind. Kind of, I guess, reminiscent of taking the risk for that shooting star at WrestleMania 19 with that, I don't even know what he was going for, jumping off the steps onto Cena when they splashed to the outside, this 260-pound guy flying on top of himself. Holy shit. But before we get to calls, because I know I got a lot of you on the line and we're going to get to you, but before we get to calls, this is going to segue into what they've done on Raw since then, Will, because in the aftermath, the night after, they had Triple H pretty much be like, we're not going to give in to your demands or whatever the fuck. and this contract is null and void or whatever, and then they have Brock put him out with the Kimura. A lot of people were like, oh, it's Triple H sticking his big nose in the hot angle yet again and blah, blah, blah. I didn't really feel that. I mean, Triple H wrestles, what, twice a year now, maybe? Now, granted, he had no business in the CM Punk angle last year for the most part. It was certainly not how it played out. But, again, like the Austin match I mentioned earlier, Triple H and Brock has never happened. Brock is only going to wrestle a handful of times, and if they're not going to use Brock like they should be to step other people up and make new stars, and he's only going to be wrestling established people, at least that one's never happened. And I certainly trust Triple H to have a good match, and I trust Brock to do the same. That's why I paid for it. If Brock's not on the card, I ain't paying for it. But Brock Triple H is the rumor for SummerSlam, and if they do add Money in the Bank to that, I think they're going to be in the Staples Center yet again. And it looks like they're going in the direction of Daniel Bryan Punk, which makes the internet happy and everything. Looks like they got a good lineup for the summer. Maybe not the next immediate pay-per-view, but at least going forward. I just found it really weird that they would have Cena do this promo of, I'm going to be gone for a while, which everyone thought meant he's going to make another movie or some shit, and they're going to use this awesome match to be Brock beat the shit out of him, so even though he lost, he put Cena out of action. And then the next night, they set up him and Johnny Ace for the next pay-per-view. I did not understand that at all. But the Triple H stuff, I enjoyed. People were getting on Triple H's case for showing up in Mayweather's corner on Saturday without a fucking sling or whatever, or arm brace, and I guess he's no Beth Phoenix. But either way, I think Brock and Triple H is actually promising. I know you hate Triple H, and if you get me started talking about 2002, 2003, I'll be right there with you. But how do you feel about this Triple H Brock Lesnar program going forward?
Do you really have to ask me that question?
I don't know. Maybe you'd be a little more lax on it this time. I don't know.
Come on, Ed. You know me all too well. Okay, anything has to do with Triple H, you know, I'm automatically, I don't care. I automatically hate it because I'm tired of him. Again, like you said, sticking his nose in angles he has nothing to do with. Just now further along his quote-unquote legacy, which in my opinion doesn't even exist.
But would you at least grant that he is a star when he came out and the music hit on Raw, got a big pop, regardless of how you or I may feel about it? He is a big name in the WWE bubble. Fans do react to him. They do consider him a star. So do you think it's the worst thing in the world for them to be doing this match that we never saw one-on-one back then?
Well, first off, I couldn't understand why everybody was going nuts to begin with. He wasn't even doing anything really of substance. Everybody's going crazy for everything he had to say. It was like, what the hell? Do I want to see the match? Not really. The only part of me that I would want to see is the fact that if they do a repeat of the Cena Brock match, I would love to see Triple H get the living shit kicked out of him. I don't care if Brock gets pedigreed and loses the match at the end. I could care less. I would pay to see the shit kicking Triple H would take.
MMA style.
So he'll break that damn nose.
Let's go to some calls and see what you guys think about. Doesn't necessarily have to be about Brock Lesnar and WWE or Paul Heyman coming back or whatever the fuck. You can talk about whatever you want. MMA or pro wrestling, past history, present, whatever you want. 949, you are on the roundtable. Name and location, please.
Name's James. I'm from California. Actually, I wanted to talk about Paul Heyman coming back, and
Feel free.
At least I wanted to know, how long do you guys think he's actually going to stick around? Because it seems to me like this could be a multiple-time thing, but he definitely won't be sticking around nearly as long as Brock Lesnar there.
Well, from all the online rumors today, they seem to imply that it was not going to be a full-time thing. It was just a temporary thing for maybe a few months or so. But if that's the case, obviously they're doing that so he could be, once again, the mouthpiece for Brock Lesnar in this case, because Brock is not there, because he's only got so many dates on his contract. And this is actually, I think, a really good way for them to extend the Brock angle weekly without actually using Brock and using up those appearances. It keeps Brock in people's minds, and it's also a nice play on the whole I'm going to take my ball and leave, I'm a quitter sort of reputation that people feel he has. So I think in that sense it's a really good idea.
I can see what you mean also. Anytime we don't have to hear Brock Lesnar talk and we can hear Paul Heyman instead, You know what? I'm fine with that one.
All right, thanks, James. And let's go to, I guess this is through Skype, Wicked Nemesis.
Mr. Eric, how are you doing, sir? Longtime fan.
I know that. I'm glad to finally have you on.
Oh, yes, sir. Will, nice to meet you, sir. I as well want to talk about Brock. Now, maybe because I'm in the business, I say a little thing about Cena. Cena could have lost 2 weeks.
Could I cut you off right there? Because
yes, sir.
I know what you're talking about, but for everyone who doesn't know, you are a manager. Is it in the Midwest?
No, sir, in the Southeast.
Southeast, okay. Well, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I'm the Oracle of Ominous, the Architect of Intellect, the Wicked Nemesis. I'm predominantly out of the Southeast. You know, I do what's called the UFO circuit, as Bill Hicks used to say, where only rednecks see me. So, but
wow.
But the thing is John Cena could have taken two losses because he is John Cena. Hogan could have taken those 2 losses, but they didn't want to. This is a new era, though. Now, the problem I had with is people complaining about Brock losing. Brock beat himself. Cena did not beat Brock. That was what really happened. And with that mindset, with him being arrogant, as you said, that is something that can happen. Now, if Cena would have just went out and just out-wrestled him, no, come on now. That's no, there's nothing to that. But Heyman coming back is a great thing. The problem I have is with Cena. Now, I'm the Oracle of Ominous, obviously. Now, and I know a great promo, and I can cut a great promo, but you don't do it at the end of a match unless you're Paul Heyman with Brock Lesnar. If you have a monster like Ryback, after Ryback kills somebody, you could have a manager speak for him. But after you just got supposedly the ass kicking of your life, you're talking about taking time away. You're pretty much breaking kayfabe, to the fans on a worldwide scale. And here you have yourself going out and pulling the curtain back, and then the very next night, you know what? Hey, this is not the end, my friend. The doors. Jim Morrison does not approve of this, okay? And I think only like 3 people got that joke, but that's quite all right. But Brock Lesnar having his shortened schedule, this is the best way to do it with Paul Heyman. And for everyone complaining about Brock losing, it was just him being cocky and him beating himself as any great monster, any great big guy should do against someone.
And that's why I said earlier that I never want to be called cynical again, because we've been accused of that shit over the past several years we've been doing this show, and I'm always like, no, I'm a realist, and I just call it as I see it, which is true. I just haven't enjoyed the product the past several years. This year they seem to be doing a lot better, and I, along with the rest of the group, had such a positive feeling after this show. Like, this match was an instant classic. The show was overall pretty good. Money well spent. We had a great time. And then I see people on fucking blogs and message boards and Twitter, and they all sound like whiny fucking bitches. And I'm like, how can I ever be called a cynic or a pessimist or whatever the fuck when I'm reading this shit? And I just enjoyed the night.
Hold on. Eric and Will, you two know this. The business gets better by fans like you guys. It's pointing out things. It's not being an asshole. It's not being cynical. The fact is that you guys make us all better. Whether it's workers, wrestlers, managers, the custodians, it doesn't matter. What everyone needs is to be critics. Nowadays, nobody wants the truth. Everybody wants some kind of sugar-coatedness that they can swallow to keep their ego in check, and that's not what this business is about. And for people who say that the fans are nothing in this business, bullshit. You guys buy the tickets that pay us. I don't do any shows for free. I don't do any events for free. And when you guys buy tickets, you pay us. And you have every right to go and say whatever you want to, and we have every right to take that, because if you listen to the fans, long enough, you will end up with them. But you can take that. You can take that constructive criticism, and fans do point out certain things that are wrong with this business, and that's the only way you can change or get left behind, one of the two.
Thanks a lot for your compliments, because
yes, sir.
I was actually just saying yesterday to somebody that the fact that we get wrestlers on this show and other people in the business on this show, it's kind of like a seal or stamp of approval to me, because we do say a lot of, I don't want to say risque or controversial, but I'd say rather blunt and truthful things, because you know in pro wrestling and even in MMA, people like to beat around the bush and sweep things under the rug. And it's a radical idea, but inserting some truth in there, I think, makes us really stand out. Caligula Ravishing in our chat room goes, Eric, you know Triple H is going to win because he is the game and his wife writes this shit. That made me chuckle. But anything else on your mind, Wicked Nemesis?
No, sir. That was basically it. This is the main focus right now in what's going on with wrestling. I do like the gut checks, but the problem is that, you know, working with a lot of those guys being in the Southeast, I work with every single one of those guys on Impact, and to see how they're doing is just, I can't watch that. You know, I do a couple of shows on a PW 24/7 Beyond Ringside, and those guys come on and we interview them, and you know, and off air they tell you, well, you can't do that, and I understand. You know, we all want to make it. We all want to make it in this business. I don't want to be on the independents, on the indies my entire life. When I got into this business, I wanted to be on the biggest stage of them all, on WrestleMania. Maybe it's my ego or what have you, but to be the best in this business, to be anything in this business, you have to have an ego. And I have one of the biggest egos of them all, especially when it comes to managers. But that's what it is. But thank you, guys. I want to tell you, we love the YouTube videos. You guys are watched in the Southeast. We talk about you guys as much. Like I said, I do 3 other shows, and still we talk about you guys. We talk about the YouTube. We talk about you, and it's great to hear. It's great to hear realism in the business. It really is. Not everybody wants to be force-fed. Not everybody wants to be a sheeple in this business. Some of us do like enlightenment and knowledge, and we do appreciate what you guys do.
Thank you so much, and it's great to hear you on finally, because we've been going back and forth between, I guess, even back with MySpace, but YouTube and Twitter and whatnot for, I guess, years at this point. I can't believe we've been doing it so long.
Yes, sir. And I do appreciate it. And I'm sorry it takes a toll on you. I understand that. But continue to do what you do for as long as you can, and you know, and we do appreciate it. But I'll get off, guys. Thank you all for listening. I am enjoying the conversations. Thank you all, guys.
Thanks a lot, Wicked Nemesis. Ramon in Chicago, you're on. Or where are you from, Ramon? I don't remember.
Yeah, I am from Chicago.
Okay, all right. Chicago, Ramon, you're on.
Yeah, so I saw Extreme Rules as well, and I agreed that Cena versus Lesnar, great match. But the thing about it was it didn't even really kind of seem like a wrestling match. It seemed more like one of those beatdowns that you'd see at the end of the movie when the bad guy just beats on the hero. There's even a point in the match where he hangs Cena upside down and is like beating him like a body bag. I thought it was actually one of the more creative matches I've seen in a while in WWE. My still favorite match of the night was Daniel Bryan versus Sheamus.
And why was that?
I just thought it was a really solid, really excellent match with great psychology. It was really just a match that showed exactly what Daniel Bryan and Sheamus can do. Has anybody ever noticed that the Cena haters have become less and less lately?
I think it's just that every once in a while something makes them drop their facade and be like, all right, he really is good. It's like when he came back at the Rumble 2008 in MSG. Everyone popped for a few seconds before like, oh, we're supposed to boo this guy. It's like at the end of the match, people were like, wow, that was really good. And you know what? It takes 2 to tango, so give Cena some credit here. I think he certainly got it in Chicago. Royce and Pomona, you're back on.
Yeah, that was a really good match, and that whole pay-per-view was good, especially the Goldberg chance. And I kind of want to ask you a question. This seemed like over the last month and a half, there's been a lot of debuts, like Florida Tensai and Mariah back and Claudio and Damien, who's supposed to come. Damien, who just showed up last week, and supposedly Dean Ambrose and stuff like that. You think they're going to, I would say shoot themselves in the foot, but they're getting in a little bit over their heads right now because they really can't handle the mid-card they have with them right now. And they're going to add, all these new and returning people. You think they're going to get in over their heads with all the new wrestlers right now?
No. I mean, to give you a simple answer, because I was just saying this week that it boggles my mind that they can have a writing team of, 16 people, plus the agents, plus Triple H, Stephanie, and Vince, and still have the phrase creative has nothing for you. That's not even including when wrestlers think up shit on their own, like Z, Long Island Iced Tea, or whatever the fuck it is that Zack Ryder did, and Colt Cabana's show on WWE.com, and Miz and Morrison had their own WWE.com show. Like, guys can come up with their own shit too. And yeah, it worked a lot better when there were less people. They told more stories for a larger amount of people when it was just, let's say, and I didn't say they were good, but yeah, Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara writing under Vince McMahon. Before that, Pat Patterson and Vince with a book, as Kevin Nash has said. I guess there's too many people who can dissent now and stir up shit. And that's why a lot of people get stalled, like fucking Dolph Ziggler, as I mentioned before. But that being said, they've got, and this is, imagine if they actually kept the brand split up so there weren't SmackDown wrestlers on every Raw, so it was even more segregated. They've got plenty of time per week. Just on Raw and SmackDown alone, that's 4 hours. You don't have to repeat people, although they insist on it. But it's not like they have to be on both shows. They can have plenty of time to spread out between people. It's the past has shown that it's possible. I don't know if that means in 2012 they can pull it off, but I think it's been so far so good. What do you think?
It's been all right, but and I like some of these guys. Like I like Claudio, and I like it's good to see Brock back, but it's almost kind of sad that it's like I know they can, but like I know I'm trying to say how they're thinking. Like they won't. They'll say like, oh, we like guys like Ziggler and especially like Kofi, who should have been main eventer like back in '09.
Yeah.
Like it's like they're in Swagger and guys like that. Like they're not going to get their chance, and you can tell they've been kind of itching for it for like years. And they show them, it's not like they're unproven. They almost could show they could hang with them as well. So it's like okay, we might push these guys, but like almost at the cost of the guys we have who now just back relegated to job in the Funkasaurus or in a nowhere tag champs now. So it's almost like, or like Swagger, who's just in a suit now. He doesn't even wrestle anymore. He's in a suit. So it's almost like, yeah, it's cool, but it also sucks at the same time, which is like kind of the theme. Like with a lot of the mid-carders since about 2004 with Shelton.
Oh, God, yeah. And a lot of that is the reason why I stopped watching regularly in 2006. After a couple years of, well, why not Shelton Benjamin? Why not Carlito? Why are you still not doing anything with Crime Time? You just squashed the fucking Spirit Squad? Like, all these new acts that were getting so over, and they didn't go to the next level with them. It was only a few select people they had designated, and there's always bullshit fucking reasons that they make up to do shit like that. So it's certainly nothing new, but I think after years of this, like I've alluded to with WrestleMania, it's WWE starting to become a once-a-year company. Everything is WrestleMania and nothing else. Look at the fucking ratings. The biggest Raw ratings this year were the day after the Rumble, the day after WrestleMania, and the day after Extreme Rules. And now they dip back down. Going into WrestleMania, the ratings were going down every week. I mean, incrementally, not huge for the most part, but that's the opposite of what you want to do. And then WrestleMania, in light of that, goes on to do a huge fucking monster buy rate, big crowd, big gate. But it's once a year. There's 364 other days in the year, WWE. They put all their eggs in one basket to the point where, well, we've fucked over putting new guys in there, and we still don't want to do it, so they keep throwing money at the problem by bringing back people. Rock this year, Brock, Austin, blah, 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 and it's returns. I mean, Heyman came back on Monday last night, and I'm like, I don't give a fuck, really. I mean, the way they're using it in the storyline is cute. I like it, like I alluded to before, but I'm not a Paul Heyman guy, I guess as people say, and there were only There were only like 5 of them in the crowd, judging by the reaction. And by the way, like one of the reasons I don't really care for Paul Heyman, aside from being, I think, a scummy liar with how much money he did not pay people in the end of ECW, but that's a whole other thing. But one thing I just find very annoying, here's the key to Paul Heyman promos. You say the first half of a sentence 3 times with a different ending each time. Here's a for instance. Brock Lesnar is huge. Brock Lesnar is strong. Brock Lesnar is a monster. That's generally the pattern he uses, and now that you hear it, you'll never not hear it, so I've probably ruined promos for you now. Abe in Augusta, Georgia, you were on.
Okay, thank you. I do want to ask you a question. Maybe you explain better to me since you work in the business. Why is it, and this clicks my mind, people bash Hulk Hogan over the past 10-plus years?
Mm-hmm. It's been a lot longer than that, but yes.
Well, I know. It gets me P.O. Why is he get bashed? People say he ruined the business. He's disgusting. He's no good. He's overrated. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what about 60+% of fans today, like even 10 years, 15 years ago, would not be fans of Hulk Hogan? Going back to WrestleMania, the drawing power. In the AWA days, before on DVD was said, he drew money in merchandising, one of the first to do it. People say with Savage and Steamboat WrestleMania 3, like made WrestleMania 3. If Hogan is Slam Andre the Giant and that never happened, correct me if I don't think WWE would have been as big as it is today. Probably wouldn't even be 1/3 of it. So why is it he get bashed at 5th degree like he does nothing for the business?
Because it's a popular thing to do.
But he's done so much, it's fucking ridiculous. And all this, he doesn't work the leg. He doesn't have the Bret Hart match. I love Bret Hart too, but he doesn't have the connection like Hulk Hogan did mainstream-wise.
Well,
I'm sorry.
This is, yes, indeed, opening a can of worms with Hulk Hogan, but WrestleMania 3 drew the huge crowd that it did and became legendary mostly because of Hogan and Andre. Granted, legendary in the hindsight sense because Savage Steamboat ended up being so good and, quote, stole the show, but they didn't bring the people into the house. Hogan and Andre did for a reason, and Hulk Hogan revolutionized wrestling twice. Now, granted, Vince McMahon gets a lot of credit for that, but he did not create Hulk Hogan. He maybe turned him yellow, but Hulk Hogan was a huge star in 1983 in AWA, in New Japan, doing Hulkamania. He was on Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show before he even came back to the WWF. So that should give you an idea of how big Hogan was then. Then he, years and years later, after he's worn out his welcome, revolutionizes the Monday Night War with the NWO. Now, granted, it was hot with the Outsiders anyway, but Hogan turning heel, and especially the way he did and the way they pulled it off, took it to another level. That's undeniable, I would think. He's far from perfect. He fucking was terrible in WCW before the NWO, for the most part. And a lot of the shit that he has come up with in the past several years for TNA, I do not like. Everything from getting rid of the 6-sided ring to Bobby Roode shouldn't win, all fucking stupid. Now, granted, like I argued in October, it does fall on Dixie Carter's shoulders. It's kind of like when we were complaining about Triple H earlier in the show. Yeah, Triple H was bad, but at the end of the day, Vince approves all of that shit. So it's got to fall back on somebody, no matter whose bad idea it was initially. So one thing, as I also alluded to earlier with the TV, remember how I said how people are like, why don't you just go on whatever channel? Like, it's that easy. People don't realize Hulk Hogan's value. People are like, oh, we have to set up a petition to get rid of him in TNA, and he's ruined the company like Scott Steiner's now. Fat asses! I've been saying that all weekend, by the way. But Scott Steiner's bitching about Hogan and Bischoff, and they haven't done this, and they've done that, and blah, blah, blah. Dixie Carter did an interview recently, and it perfectly showed what his value is. When TNA or whoever has meetings with executives from TV or potential sponsors, just meetings with whomever they're trying to make a deal with, don't you realize the value that that name has? These fucking people don't know who the fuck Austin Aries is, or AJ Styles, or Samoa Joe, and that's not to say anything about their talent. They are great, and it's TNA's fucking fault for not making them bigger stars than they are. But that's a whole other issue. The point is that people know who Hulk Hogan is. If they go into this meeting and say to an executive or a sponsor, well, we do 1 million viewers on Spike TV every week. Part of our organization, we have Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Sting, a lot of younger guys too. What do you think the chances are that they're going to know Hulk Hogan, Sting, and Ric Flair and those sort of names versus Shima Zion? He's got a fucking value there. And if there was a better filter, it would probably be going a lot better. But point is, like when we did our blog outside the Liacouras Center in Philadelphia, there were 2 matches that people mainly came out for, Hogan and Sting and Rude and Angle. And this is everyone from adults going through nostalgia to even little kids in 2011 dressed up as Hulk Hogan. So don't tell me that he should fucking leave whatever and he has no name value or he doesn't bring anything to the table. It's not saying he's perfect, far from it, but he gets so much shit, as I've alluded to with Stone Cold or anybody else who, if they were doing the exact same thing, it would be a totally different opinion. The Internet's always hated Hulk Hogan for whatever fucking reason. Internet fans, the smart marks, think that everyone should be Dynamite Kid and whatever the fuck.
Bret Hart, too. They think Bret Hart, too.
Well, Bret Hart's a little better example.
On that DVD, The Greatest Rivalry, he bashed Hogan like, if you see him 2 times, you'll get bored and death and all that kind of stuff. Like he was a flash in the pan, like that kind of thing.
Well, if we had been held down in WCW by Hogan, we'd have a different opinion probably too. But that's a whole other issue. So, anything else, Abe?
Well, I do want to ask, a lot of old-timers say, well, wrestling overexposed to all this TV, but over the last, 3-4 years, they have reduced a lot of TV and WWE as far as instead of being 4 hours, 6-8 hours to 4 hours now. And you did illustrate something that hit my mind that they are bringing new wrestlers. Do you think they kind of are reducing with the overexposure? I know they're reducing it, but do you think that the way they're reducing it is fine, or just keeping it from SmackDown Raw, or just have it be a 1 hour, let's say Friday night, and go to just a 2 hour Raw?
I really don't think they have reduced their schedule because even though Superstars and NXT aren't on TV anymore, they're still on the internet. They're still being taped. They want to get it on Hulu or their network or whatever. They show it internationally. So even though it's maybe not prominent to us anymore, it's not that it doesn't exist. And especially with if they do get this network off the ground, let's see if that happens by the end of the year, then that's even more content. We've seen they've been producing more short content now for their YouTube account as part of that partnership. So I don't see them reducing that anytime soon. Jay in South Carolina, you are on.
Hey, how's it going, Eric?
I'm kind of losing my voice, but I'm trying to get through it for you.
I wanted to talk about the interview last week of the Bavaro brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say I'm on the bandwagon. Every time I see these guys in the ring, every time I see these guys in the ring, they're always improving. And I don't really think they reached their full potential yet. And the promos they were doing, especially at the beginning of 2011 on the Video Wire, was just awesome. Anything like 10 times better than anything Richards or Edwards or Roderick Strong was doing. And they have
anybody
a perfect
else
gimmick.
for that matter.
Yeah, maybe Steen, but that's a totally different thing. But and the gimmick is so great, you know, being like the clean cut grandma's boys. It's just perfect.
Well, it's like a lot of things in wrestling where, for instance, Paul Bearer has a real background in mortuary science, so they turn him into this cartoon character, Paul Bearer. It's kind of like that because the whole thing with the grandma and whatever, that's based on real life. So you take that and you turn it up some notches, and there you go. And I'll tell you, if you think they were good before, I just saw their match from Unity in Chicago. You can see the improvement. They definitely honed their skills in Japan, and I haven't seen their Chikara stuff or anything else domestic just yet, like PWX. But I did see that Ring of Honor match, and you could see the difference. So they're even better now.
Oh yeah, I bet they're in top shape coming from the dojo and Noah and stuff.
Way too much spray tan for me, but that's just me.
I also wanted to say something about the poll Sure. I voted for Steve Austin and CM Punk.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I would do it if it ever happened would just kind of be just like the Bret Hart Austin WrestleMania 13 thing. Have, Punk work over Austin's neck during the match and get the fans behind Austin, and then, maybe have Austin get busted open, and then finally, after fighting and scratching, have him pass out to the Anaconda Vice. I think that would be perfect way to go for Austin's last match.
Well, he said that he's 100%, that his neck is all healed up and he's having fun doing movies, and it seems like they were, maybe it was just them two, but it seemed like they were pushing for it, they being WWE, but looks like they might be going in the Brock direction now. We'll see what happens with that, but your finish with Austin passing out, I guess it's somewhat reminiscent of the blood from the stone finish of WrestleMania 13 and the sharpshooter with Bret Hart, but if they ever did Austin Cena, I think the real way to put him over would be they could work a brawl maybe even around the building, and this is all just like 1998 Austin doing these sort of matches to cover for his shortcomings with his neck. So I don't know if he'll be able to go 2001 post-surgery style all out in a match like this, but if he can't, a brawl would definitely cover that, and a perfect finish would be he goes to kick him to set up the stunner, catch the kick, turn that into an STF, Austin's bleeding, and this time he taps.
Yeah, that'd be great too.
So anything else on your mind, Jet?
That's it. That's all I can think of right now, but big fan of the show. Good job. I'll be listening.
All right, thank you very much. Sergio in North Brunswick, New Jersey, you are on the round table.
Hello, how you doing, Eric?
I'm surviving, trying to get through it, but I'm interested on what you have to say.
Well, before I go on, I just want to say that I'm showing a lot of support for the round table. Been listening to you guys for about half a year. Listening to all your episodes, I've been learning a lot, going deeper into, the history of all this stuff, because you guys have been watching this for like more than 20 years. I've only been watching this since late 1999 during the high peak of the Attitude Era. And it really means a lot to get deep into all this stuff. It really does.
And that should be a lesson to everybody, because, every once in a while we see, let's say on YouTube, someone discovers us and is like, wow, I'm so happy I found the show. Where's it been all my life or whatever? And they go through the archives and enjoy all the past shows we've done, which is also great to see. But there's still some more to come, and I'm glad that everybody participates, leaves comments. I wish there was more. Leave comments on iTunes, the message board, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, wherever. We want to hear your thoughts. So now that you're on the line, Sergio, thanks for supporting the show, and what do you want to say?
I remember Will mentioned that he was kind of annoyed with the officials getting near Cena, checking on him because he was all busted open and all that.
We can't have blood.
Yeah. Blood, oh. But I kind of liked what the officials were doing because they were really portraying Brock Lesnar as this complete wrecking machine, as this monster, and I thought it was great. And I also want to...
Before you continue, on that aspect of it, I know why they do it. For the most part, it's because Linda's got to get elected, and we can't have blood all over these guys who are Mattel figures and all that sort of shit. But that being said, in this match, it almost kind of worked because of the beating. Because in MMA, in a real fight, there are times where they stop the fight to let the doctors take a look at a cut or look at someone's eye. Can you continue and see if you're okay? So if that was part of it and part of the plan, great on them. It definitely worked in this case, even though I don't know if that's exactly what happened. Of all the times that has happened, I don't think it was the worst in this one, especially because it gave Brock a chance to dance over in the corner and smile like a monster, and Cena do the great sell of the groggy trying to get up with the rope sort of thing. So that's my little input on that aspect of it. And what else did you have?
I also want to go into the Sheamus-Bryan Danielson match. One thing I noticed was that when Danielson got himself disqualified, it reminded me of the Lesnar Angle match, the Iron Man match they had back in '03. Because if you remember how Brock was just beating the living hell out of Angle with a chair, getting himself disqualified, and getting him hurt to get his pinfalls easily. That's what it kind of reminded me of, like what Danielson's strategy was all about, just to inflict pain into Sheamus. So I really liked what they were doing with that. But the match was just fantastic. It really shows that Bryan Danielson can bring the best out of anybody. I really look forward to his future. I could definitely see him getting bigger and bigger in the company.
Yes!
Yes! One more thing. I've been kind of hearing some stuff about Brodus Clay, how some people might think he might be getting stale a little because he's having mostly squash matches. I remember watching the Raw after WrestleMania and how he came in to protect Santino. I was really hoping for a big feud between those four, and the idea I got was maybe WWE could be teasing a big comeback for the tag team division. But WWE was just completely trolling us with that.
Oh, well, I mean, they put the titles on the token black champions, thrown together black team, like, well, just put the two black guys together, and they won the titles. And who lost on Monday in the singles match already? Shit, forget. But
yeah, I forgot to.
Oh, wow.
Because I was really looking forward to seeing a Brodus Santino tag team. I always found those kind of tag teams really unique, with a big guy and a smaller guy, kind of like Yokozuna and Owen.
Stephen Marquise in our chat room adds that it was Kofi who lost to Dolph Ziggler, so that's that clarification, I guess.
Right.
As you were saying, Yokozuna, Owen Hart.
Yeah, because I was really looking forward to see if this was really going to become a tag team between Brodus and Santino. It would have reminded me of Owen and Yokozuna. I thought, having a big guy and a smaller guy together kicking ass.
Speaking of Owen Hart, this week was Owen Hart's birthday, and this is something people say, not just about Owen, but about a lot of people, and I thought I'd make a point about it. They'll say, because Owen Hart was so great, he was really one of the best of all time, and people will always say, you hear this so much, Owen should have won the title.
Oh, that's exactly what I kind of think. Because I thought it would have been a pretty neat storyline with Owen during 1998 at the time, because almost the whole Hart Foundation was in WCW at the time, and I would have liked for Owen to be portrayed as the last Hart. So it would have been cool for a big push for him, at least near the main event level, or at least upper mid card.
Well, let me say something about that, because it was clear from December 97 on that they had no serious plans on ever pushing Owen to that level, at least. In fact, he was supposed to beat the Godfather for the Intercontinental title in the match he died in, which is coming up May 23rd. But when people say that about Owen or anybody else, because there's a whole litany of people who never won the world title, and they should have because they were awesome, like Rick Rude, Jake the Snake, Ted DiBiase, Kurt Hennig, whoever the fuck. And I'm not counting in WWF or whatever. And I'm not counting like AWA or international title sort of shit. I'm talking like during Hogan's heyday, let's say. And I'm like, no, because isn't it a lot cooler that these guys like Rowdy Roddy Piper became legends without having to win a world title? Everyone knows who George the Animal Steel is. He never won a fucking title. Jake the Snake Roberts didn't have one. Let me put it this way. If they had the same sort of schedule and mentality and writing team and all that sort of bullshit that we have now back then, Hogan, instead of having one 4-year-long title reign, would have had like 8 title reigns at least. So what does that mean? Every fucking challenger that goes against him, there are 2 world titles now, so that's another thing to add on top of that. But so how's that working out now where everyone's like a former world champion? It sucks. Okay, so what? every challenger that comes by. Let's say when Hogan was champion in his heyday, Bundy and Orndorff and Savage and DiBiase and Kurt Hennig and all these other people are former world champions now. Isn't it a lot better to have stars without needing that? Isn't it better to have one guy be the standard bearer and the champion so it's more special when he loses it? Instead of like everyone on Raw in a Money in the Bank match is all former world champions, it means nothing now?
I have to agree with you with that, because I think a world title of some sort, if you have so many champions like that, I think like a world title can lose a lot of relevance. Like, for example, I remember you mentioned something about you were comparing the use of the Money in the Bank to the 24/7 hardcore title.
Yes.
Stuff that was going on during the Attitude Era. And I definitely have to agree with you with that, because it loses so much relevance. It really does, in my opinion.
It's a very cheap, easy way to make a champion, because people will pop for title changes, and I guess they kind of just ignore the fact that it makes Punk's win or Miz or Swagger or any of these other guys win kind of shallow. I mean, Miz worked, Edge it worked because they were sneaky fucking shithead heels. But everyone else, like, I don't know. People buy it anyway, so maybe I'm just wrong.
Yeah, but when you mentioned Swagger, I definitely have to agree with you with Swagger, because in my opinion, that was the worst Money in the Bank win. Because when he pinned Jericho, the crowd was just didn't know what to do. Like, Swagger was showing no emotion at all. Like, I didn't know what that was supposed to mean. Like, maybe he's all like, yes, I'm champion. You must respect me. It's a dream come true. It was showing no emotion, and that was showing so much irrelevance for the title, in my opinion.
Well, it certainly doesn't help when they have multiple world titles and they still don't even main event pay-per-views in comparison to a fucking ambulance match like Cena had at Elimination Chamber or a Hell in a Cell. Undertaker's streak is more important than any title. Rock and Cena. I mean, granted, there are some matches that are more important, like the Royal Rumble should finish a pay-per-view. Rock and Hogan. Even this year, Rock and Cena. I'll grant that. But it happens more often than not. It's not as rare as it should be. So thanks a lot, Sergio, for calling in. Chuck in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, you're on.
Hey, what's up? I mean, it's probably a little early to bring it up because SummerSlam's so far away, but to be fair, people have talked about Triple H and Lesnar at SummerSlam already, so I've been hearing rumors about CM Punk defending the title against Lord Tensai. I personally like the gimmick so far. I know a lot of people think it's too much of a throwback to, like, I mean, if people thought the Sultan was bad, they think Tensai's even worse. I personally like it. I would like the match considering what happened last night. I kind of like their chemistry in the ring. What do you think?
I was going to ask you what you like about it, because I do like A-Train, and I think, excuse me, damn, I've been waking up with like a sore throat for days, and it's catching up to me. But I like A-Train. This just does not work for me. Not even so much because there's a throwback or whatever. It's just the way they approach it. It's just not working.
I would like if they actually would refer to his former name instead of just saying former superstar.
There's no reason to beat around the bush with it. What the fuck difference does it make?
If they would say his name, maybe people would stop chanting it.
But I just mean, like, even in the ring, this slow, methodical shit, I'm just not, it's not working for me. I love how, if you're talking about throwbacks, what I love is, even when I was a kid, seeing the absurdity of, let's say, Crush throws a super kick, and Gorilla Monsoon would go, martial arts expert Crush. And I'm like, yeah. He throws a fucking super kick or someone does a Mongolian chop. That means they're a martial arts expert. Even as a kid, I was fucking insulted by that sort of shit. But especially now
the fact that Crush couldn't really even move.
Well, I just picked someone randomly. I mean, they were
I do remember. I have vivid memories of Crush's, like, you know, midsection punches where he was like, it was all about the after effect and all. And
They're like, Kama is the supreme fighting machine. Fucking jerk me off. Especially now that mixed martial arts is so prominent. When you get some guy who went off to the Orient and he comes back from Japan, so now he does all these like Tai Chi looking hand poses and shit. I'm like, get the fuck out of here.
It's funny because me and my friend, we actually call him Lord Tai Chi because half the moves involve some Tai Chi
looking shit, yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, it's fucking Albert. Have him go out there and do his Baldo bomb and crush over people. The fuck's he doing this methodical, slow shit? I'm mystical now.
I mean, that was what I liked about him, at least as Albert. I mean, he'd run across the ring pretty fast. He was,
Right, so that's how I feel about it. It's just not working for me. So what appeals about it to you?
It's a rehash of a gimmick that's been done before, but it's also a rehash of something that's always worked. I mean, Tajiri misting people used to get a big pop. He adopted it from Muda. Muda didn't start it, Got it from Kabuki. It's something, at least that part is great. Him doing the whole mist thing. The fact that he missed his own hand for some reason, I kind of like. He does
you just like it when a guy bites down into a condom and spits it out.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
What else you got?
I mean, he's still doing the Baldo bomb, or whatever the hell they're calling it now, Ichiban. I don't know. And,
Ichiban?
They're calling it Ichiban, number one.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah, he screams Lord Tensai Ichiban and then hits the move.
Well, Ichiban means number one in Japanese, so that's pretty cute.
That's also. And, I'm so desperate for a big guy. I mean, they've been really trying. They tried
so am I.
They tried. Oh, God damn it. I mean, ever since Brock's initial departure at WrestleMania 20, they were just really trying, and they got pretty close with Batista, and then they had all these other, wannabes, never will be's, guys like Lashley, and they're still even trying Mason Ryan just recently, Ezekiel Jackson's utter shit. At least with Tensai, even though it's a different gimmick, he's proven that he can go in there and have good matches with people, especially smaller guys. I always used to love him when he was in the ring with a certain child murderer, wife murderer, but, he could do the same thing with Punk, in my opinion.
Who, the murderer? Nah.
Yeah.
Well, he's also shaved off all his body hair, so
yeah, that's the difference. People were always
superpowers.
People
and let's not forget,
just shaved the back off.
Actually, maybe the reason they don't want to bring up his name is because he was named after a penis stud.
Yeah, that is true. Well, A-Train, a little different,
Yeah, I suppose so. Thank you, Chuck. Glad for your input. And let's go to Justin in Eagle, Wisconsin. You are on the Roundtable.
Yo, am I on?
I just said you are.
I don't really have much to comment wrestling-wise. I've been pretty busy with college and I've been missing out on everything since Extreme Rules.
And if you are busy like Justin is, you can always download our archives, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio. So even if you don't listen to the show live, I send out the fucking invite and everyone declines it in the fucking event on Facebook, you can listen to it any time after the show is over. So it's not like you have to listen live all the time. So if you are listening, I think it's way after the fact, but either way. Subscribe. We need more subscribers. Jamal out in California, you are on.
Yeah, I was really hoping to chime in about Kofi Kingston and R-Truth winning being the first black tag team since Soul Patrol to win the tag team championship, and how much that match was a big letdown because it's such for a championship match you expect it to be I didn't keep track, but it felt like less than 5 minutes. It felt like 3 minutes, but I counted as 3 tag-ins between R-Truth and Kofi Kingston against the Colognes, which another team I'm glad to have won the tag team championship when they did. It's such a letdown. The tag team championship.
You can't just be happy that they won the belts.
I would really love to, but I'm very picky. And
I can tell that fucking Mark Henry gets the title, and you're like, "Yay, a black guy finally won!" But how's judo going, by the way?
Oh, great! It's been great. The semester at the college has already ended for me, so yeah, I'm taking a summer break away from it. Have learned a few arm bars before the semester ended, so that was great. Learned the Kimura, and unfortunately, the short judo documentary that I've made Although I'm glad I've done it anyway, it didn't actually take place in the whole competition, but that's fine. I actually did something. Hopefully I'll do a bigger film project, hopefully involving martial arts films.
If that's the case, let us know. Speaking of that, Martin LeConte, who's on our show here and there, Rodney's brother, is going to have his first mixed martial arts fight coming up in Jackson, New Jersey, Liberty High School. That's Friday, June 1st. It's an amateur MMA event, I believe. I don't know, maybe there are pro fights, but his fight at least is amateur, and it's Crush Entertainment is promoting that. So that's very exciting. Martin LeConte has been training with Team Oliveira for a long time. He's got his blue belt in jiu-jitsu, and now he's putting on the gloves to step into the cage. Well, I assume it's the cage. Maybe it's a ring, like Pride. But I assume it's a cage. So we'll find out more about that and let everyone know how he does, of course. So anything else you got to say, Jamal?
Yes, good luck, Martin LeConte, with that. Hopefully he'll do better than me in the judo tournament that I had April 1st. Oh, boy, that was horrible. Oh, well, the judo club, they were kind to me about saying I tried my best. I just wish I did one ippon. I got beaten by submission, by throw, by pin. First time. Oh, well, first time. I'll get some sort of better rank next year.
I love how we went to UFC on Saturday, and I was sitting with Alex Payne, and we talked about pro wrestling the whole time, practically, up until about the Koscheck fight, and from there on it was Mary Fuck Kill. But we went to an MMA event, which was great, and we enjoyed it, but we're talking about pro wrestling and bullshitting the whole time. In fact, during the Husamar Pal Harris fight, when they were rolling around on the ground and going for those leg locks, I was waiting for a little lull, and I screamed out, "Figure 4!" just to kind of gauge who around us would laugh at that. And there were a good amount of laughs, so I'm like, all right, I know some people like
that would be so
know pro wrestling in our area. So what else you have to say, Jamal?
Pro wrestling MMA event, almost like those times I sparred with one guy trying to figure out how many ways could I apply the Kimura without actually doing a ground technique. And yeah, standing could work. Yeah,
well, generally, you're supposed to be in the dominant position on top, so it is interesting that Brock does it on his back, since that's usually you're put there in someone's guard, and then you can try and hook it, where you'd think that Brock, with his weight, if it was a real fight, would be on top dominant and step over and do it that way. But whatever, it's pro wrestling. At least it's more visual this way, so the arm's up in the air. But
against Triple H, he's the god of the company. He beat a black guy after a racist angle, remember? So Triple H letting Brock go over him, very unlikely. Judo was fun, and I hope that the WWE will up their tag team division like they said last year. Such a shame Miz and R-Truth didn't become tag team champions.
When did they say that?
It looked like it could have been better. It could have been great last year, but we know what happened. R-Truth got busted and all that kind of crap. But yeah, that's all.
All right, thanks, Jamal. That's the final word, because we're off the air in a moment. But before we go, next time it's going to be the 50th Wrestling Roundtable Radio, and it will be our last radio show, at least for the time being, for the foreseeable future. Call it the series finale, coming up at the end of May, and we're hoping to have the Man Scout, Jake Manning, call in for that show. Indie wrestler who just debuted, I believe, with Evolve, and he's been all over the country, not just this coast, in Charlotte with PWX and up in Canada, all over. He's done a lot, and hopefully we get him on next time, the last time, and we'll also be talking about the Strikeforce World Heavyweight Grand Prix Finals coming up between Josh Barnett and Daniel Cormier. Gilbert Melendez next lightweight title defense is on that show too. UFC's Night of the Heavyweights, UFC 146 with Junior Dos Santos and Frank Mir for the heavyweight title, and WWE's Over the Limit. Anything else coming up? Hopefully we'll cover it too. So for Will Brooks and all the callers, thank you very much for listening so far. We hope you join us for the next and the last show. Wrestling Roundtable Radio. You can always find more on WrestlingRoundtable.com, though. That's got all our links. iTunes, Facebook, Twitter. MySpace too. YouTube, subscribe to us there, and Go Fight Live. You can catch us there too. So this is Eric Santamaria. Hopefully by next time I get my voice back, and join us on WrestlingRoundtable.com.